Hello guys, today we got a tier list update because I looked at my old tier list. It's from like a year ago and it needs updating. It's severely out of date and I've gotten a lot more experience. I'm back to close to just about 30 TS again, and I think it's about time to do it. It's also holiday time, so I'm like, this is a good time to do it. All right. I will go over the Cortex in the next video, but we'll start with the Armada. There haven't been new units added yet, but the Legion faction, I think it's underway, so there should be a third faction and possibly more units in the future. So I wanted to update it before these new units come in, so that way we have at least like a reference point of what things were going for before. So this is the same tier list as last time, but I'm going to edit this. So this is SABC niche, which is not necessarily bad. I said that in my last video. D and Beyond All Reason. Beyond All Reason is also not necessarily bad. We just have reasons to put them in a separate tier. D is kind of bad. So there have been some changes to the game and the meta, especially the meta, and I do need to make the tier list reflect that. So I'll start at the bottom. The video hopefully will be in 1080 this time, as opposed to my previous ones, and the microphone is better as well. Um, construction vehicles are all A tier. Like they would all be an A tier, but for an aesthetic purpose, we're doing that. I will say that uh, because of the mobility and the late game potential of aircraft constructors, like you need to make compact bases, and aircraft constructors are very useful for that. Like early game, you're going to use the vehicle and bots, obviously, right? But then you're going to transition to it, so they have a slightly better use case in the late game and on islands on Supreme Straight. That's another thing because of the meta. Most of the time, players now play 8v8s. This is also an 8v8 tier list, by the way. Most people play on Glitters and Supreme Isthmus. Those are like the two most common maps nowadays. We don't play on Forge. We don't play on Coombe Valley. We don't play on like any other map pretty much. Like it's pretty much devolved into these two maps, and so the units that perform well on those two maps are going to be higher up on this tier list. So the aircraft constructors actually do pretty well, especially on glitters, because you need to make compact bases sometimes. Like you need to go scale big, like Supreme Straight, you need to scale big. Maybe you're building a Ragnarok, that oftentimes you'll see that you'll use aircraft constructors, and that's why they're there. Seaplane gunships, I haven't seen much happening with them recently. So I'm just gonna move them to the bottom here. Because we don't play it on, I think it's like 8 horses or something. That map anymore. Like seaplane gunships, you hardly ever see them anymore. So they're in Beyond All Reason tier. Seaplane construction turrets, like seaplane construction bots. This or planes, same thing, right? Like it's just like we don't see them anymore. They're not necessarily bad. Uh, I think the gunships still probably are really good, but I just haven't seen them anymore, so I don't know as much about them. Bots are where they are. We have the decoy commander right here. He's going to be in Beyond All Reason still, because if you use him, you're absolutely nuts. You're Beyond All Reason, so they stay there. All right. I will say that I don't know what happened. I don't know if they got buffed or not, or maybe it's just a different meta. Um, the what do you call it? The anti-air bots for Armada feel a little better than they used to, although 9 times out of 10 you're going to want flak from the vehicle factory. So I would say that they feel better now, but I still say like these are inferior units. Like you would not want to build them. You would much rather build flak. And for that reason, they still stay in D tier. I would move them up to C tier so that they're like usable, right? You can field them and they'll be okay, right? But most of the time, you much rather just have your flak in your army. Like this is very useful if you're being harassed by like 1 or 2 gunships, but if they're getting you with like a swarm of 15, you're not gonna be wanting to build like that many of these. Like maybe you can get away with it, but ideally no. Ideally you're gonna be using your flak. All right. So niche, this tier used to mean like, oh, it's sort of like an alternate C tier, but it's like hardly used. I am going to move the Twilight down. Twilight sucks. I'm actually gonna make a decision on this. Twilight's actually bad. It is way too hard to set up. You almost never see it, and when it does, you do see it. It's like hardly makes any impact. So I'm moving this to D tier. This is actually doo doo water. Like I think the Cortex have a much a way better what do you call it uh, funny mexes, way better unique mexes, right? Um, Also, because this is a unique Armada thing, it's in this tier list, right? Most of the buildings I do not include. Yeah, maybe in the future I'll do that, but for now, no. Abductor is still niche. Mobile anti-nuke still niche. Groundhog, which is the minesweeper, is still niche. The mines are still pretty good, right? You see them on being used more so these days by like higher level players. They're okay, right? They're all right. Mines are cost efficient when they connect to enemies, and so that's why they're good. Let me just make sure I'm recording. Okay, you see my OBS. That's amazing. Okay, because I had to do a screen capture because I don't know why it bugs out. Okay, sprinters still C tier. Like they suck. Okay, they're like barely usable. They're just fast pawns only for breakthroughs. Like you really don't want to use them. Pincers, they're okay actually. I'm gonna move them up above the other amphibious units. So amphibious units, you really don't want to use them unless you have to cross water or you're doing an attack across water, right? So that means they're only viable on like Supreme Isthmus as opposed to glitters. You're not going to use them on glitters at all. Platypus are overrated actually. They actually are doo-doo water, garbage at fighting water. So if you're trying to take over water, do not build platypuses. Do not build platypuses. Turtles, like you don't see them that often because most of the time they'll elect for this or elect for this. Um, I don't think these guys are really that good. They're only used for water attacks. Wyvers are okay, still in C tier. Gunslingers are still in C tier. They're still outclassed by all other T2 units. They bully T1 so hard, your backline player might give you, as a frontline player, a gunslinger to micro in the front, and so they're still pretty decent at that. But they also have high regen, but they suck at once the T2s start rolling out. They can't fight them. They have no range against enemy T2 units and die too quickly to them. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Weber's EMP and Reclaim, and they can walk over cliffs. For that reason, you would much rather use the Lazarus. Centurion, I'm actually going to move up into high B tier now. Um, so so as players have started using different strategies a lot more, the use case for Centurions and in the other faction is very similar. These units on their own are kind of bad, but the way you use them is you pair them with Rocketeers or artillery units, right? And they actually serve the purpose of like your fast infantry or your light plasma bots pretty well actually, and they make it so that you can't your long range options like your Rocketeers and your artillery cannot be rushed down as easily because they have so much DPS in their close range that and so much HP in their close range that they actually keep the enemies at bay. And they're like similar to the welder, right? Basically for the T1 phase. So actually, I think they're a lot better than I used to give them credit. So I'm moving them up a tier. Still not A tier. Like you can't really like. You might be able to get away like a couple games just building nonstop Centurion and rushing down dudes, but I don't know, man. Once T2 phase comes out, like these things also not so good. C tier. This is a what is it called? Paralyzer. Armada is like a. It's like a tactical missile launcher that EMPs. It's still okay. I think it's not a C tier because it's only defenses. I'm gonna put it in a niche tier now. Ambassadors also, I'm moving them up. These are the rocket artillery tanks, basically rocket artillery tanks, and they are actually much better than I used to give credit for. I think it's like their range is good now. The range of damage is pretty good. So they also like just their projectiles like disjoint a little bit. They don't track. So if the enemy's doing some like weird micro funny business, maybe you can still catch them with it. And so they're actually a lot better than they used to be. They do outrange a lot of the like long range options as well. So they're actually a lot better. What do you call it? Razorbacks still kind of bad. Okay, I still don't think these are that great. I pretty much never see them ending games. They're good on defense when microed, right? But I don't know. They don't have enough range and HP to really break through the front line, which is what you want a T3 to do. Okay, so they're still in C tier. Like I don't think Razorbacks are that great. Gremlin, like I never see them ending games. The only times they're ending games is when one team is so far ahead that it doesn't even matter that it was a Razorback that did it. Like it could have been anything. All right, and that's why they're in C tier. Gremlin, it has a use case in that it can attack the enemy backline because it's a stealth unit. It's a stealth tank that hits, like you can cloak it and send it in. If you got like even one of them can destroy all the energy converters, and I'm actually gonna put them higher up in the B tier. Like once they build stealth detection, they can they kind of don't get through, right? But if you can win games with it, this is sort of like a cheese tactic that you can just win games with. Uh, this is a very good like placket strat. So I am putting them at the top of B tier or like high B tier. They're still pretty good. Decoy, what do you call it? Decoy fusion is going to the bottom of niche. Uh, Nobody has. I've yet to see someone use this and get a bomber player to accidentally bomb this. So I've not seen it yet. It's still going to niche. I'm not putting it in the B tier anymore. The cloakable fusions are staying in B tier because they are actually very useful when your T1 fusion can stay hidden. That's very good still. All right, butlers. I'm actually moving down just a little bit. They're still B tier because they're a good combat engineer. That they're very good at running around building stuff. I don't think they can build as many units as they used to. I don't remember exactly, but I don't think they're as powerful as they used to be. Recluses. This one is also. I'm actually gonna. This is kind of rough. I'm actually gonna move them up to A tier, low A tier. Okay. Um, it's mainly actually this one's a hard one. It's low A tier or high B tier because on glitters the canyons the recluses do really well on the canyons. Um, they just get up there and they're so hard to dislodge that on glitters these are like S A tier, right? On everywhere else they're like B tier, right? So the average is that is probably low A tier. Okay, I'll put them in low A tier only because on glitters they are absolutely a menace. If you're like on T1 and the enemy shows up recluses on the cliffs, like you are like so sad. All right, Thors, I'm still keeping in the B tier. Like I low B tier. I still don't think these guys are that great. They have like a close range. I think what is it called? It's not phalanx, is it? It's like how battleships have like the close range deck guns. I don't know what it is, but they have like two on the sides, and they have a main gun that chains. Um, and they have an EMP D gun, which is like the paralyzer is like the tactical missile. Um, the problem is they're too slow. They don't have enough range, and their HP, although good, gets eviscerated because of their slow speed and slow range. That they like if you're attacking a fortified position, they can't break through. They're good against spam, um, but against other T3s they might struggle. And so I don't really like using them. Jaguars, or like a mini Thor, they just like they actually have anti-air on them. I think I forgot that in the last video. They have anti-air on them, which is kind of funny. So they're good in breakthroughs. They're pretty fast. You want to use them in small groups so that you can like insta kill, as I was at alpha strike. You want to alpha strike units that appear in your vision. So the Jaguars can do that. They're a stopgap unit because they're very cheap at T2. So if you're under pressure and you get to T2, you can try to push out some Jaguars to try to catch the stragglers or whatever, fill the gap. So it's a stopgap unit. They are pretty good at that, and they're just like an all right unit. I'm moving them up just a little bit. Fat boys, we don't see them that often anymore. Actually, they're similar to the Czar from the Cortex in that maybe the T2 player can get out of the Fat Boy, but I don't know. I'm keeping them both of these kind of low though. Vanguards, they're all right. They're just a T3 artillery, and they can climb cliffs and shoot very high angles as well, or high trajectories, and they're just okay. Nothing too crazy with them. Whistlers, I I think they've been performing much better than they used to be, so I'm moving them up a couple notches here. But they still have low damage. They have good range. They're very slow. And they're useless once T2 comes out, right? But as a strategy, Whistlers have been doing a little better. Actually, I'm gonna move them up here. Ambassador, yeah, yeah. They've been doing better, so I'm moving them to high B tier. Januses, oof. Players have gotten so much better at Janus usage. Okay, guys, Janus usage has gone through the roof. These are actually kind of nutty new units. I might have to move it once I get up to the S tier. Change the position, right? These are kind of nutty units. So it's like a medium range tank that fires tracking rockets, and the rockets do splash damage, and they do so much damage. They're expensive units at T1, but oof, like you just get a row of those. You run them in, you dash back if you can. They fire the missile, and then you run away. So it's a hit and run kind of deal. So strong nowadays. Players use them a lot more. I think the pro players use them a lot more. They're really good on glitters. They're okay on Supreme Straight because metal is so tight on that map that it's kind of hard to get a lot of Januses. But on glitters, they are insane. So I'm putting them on low S tier here. Of course, when T2 comes out, these guys are useless. Okay, where were we at? Whistler, we cover that. We cover that. Welders. I'm gonna keep the welders where they are. They haven't really changed all that much. They still do what they do. Um, would you rather have like? Is it better? Like, I think Jaguars are actually a little better than wielders nowadays. Like, there's no need to build the wielder when you can just build the Jaguar, right? Or like, but for Bot Factory, this is like the only unit that you have. So I'm gonna keep them at the level of the Jaguar. Like, they're okay still. I think Jaguars have more use cases, so I'm going to put the Jaguar a little ahead. Welders have been just okay. They don't hit air. They're tanky, slow, medium range, and they chain hits, and they're good at like protecting snipers and dogs, and well, not dogs, but snipers mainly. And they just sort of deal with rush down units. All right, Centurion, we moved. Tumbleweed, still king of B tier. Okay, these guys are still slept on. People still don't use them, but when they do use them, they're insane. They're little self-destructing bombs that you just run out, and I believe they can cloak, and that's just kind of nutty as well. We did move the Recluse up here. Recluse, we're keeping at low 8, right? Rover for Armada is going to stay where it is because the tick outclasses it. Rovers do have more HP and damage, but they have like a little bit of an issue. Same with the other faction. With their turn rate on their turret, it makes them miss their shots sometimes. Or not be able to get their shots off. So a little bit issue with that. They can go through water, so if like shallow water, the tick can't do that, but the rover can, so that's why it stays there. Prude, all right, Prude is going down to C tier. Okay. As I've watched a lot more games and played with the Prude a lot more, because we're not running Forge, like we're not playing on Forge that often anymore. Very seldomly do you see is it worth building the Prude anymore, because like most of the time you're playing on Supreme Straight or you're playing on Glitters, and you rather just get the Eco or the Cerberus turret from the Cortex. So Prude going down to C tier, like yikes, man. Armada like with their mexes and geos, yucky, actually bad. All right. Rovers are right. Transports are staying where they are. They are good units still. Pawns have gotten, I think they gotten buffed. I think they have more speed now than Cortex grunts, and they actually run. They run faster, and they still do pretty good damage. And I think their range is still the same. I think grunts still outrange them, but that it's no longer as bad as they used to be. I'm gonna move them at least in the middle tier. I'll look at them later. Maces, they're still maces. They do okay. Actually, I will move them up. I will move them up. Let me send them up here just so we can talk about them later. Ghosts are still ghosts. They can EMP things, very useful for your snipers, for your dogs, right? They're spy bots that can get in. Radar units stay where they are. They're very good support units. All the stealth and cloaking, right? Countered by Junos, right? That EMP sort of missile thing. All right, Stouts. Stouts aren't as good as they used to be. Even on a map like Glitters, where it's very flat and there's a lot of metal, what happens, I've noticed, is commanders just degun tanks really easily. And players are a lot better now. They degun a lot more, and these stouts don't do as well as they used to be, okay? They're not as good as they used to be. So I'm actually moving them down below the Recluse, because, like, the Recluse is insane when it comes out. Stouts, they're even, like, B tier almost. Like, actually, they haven't been performing that well, actually. Even on Supreme Straight, they don't perform that well, actually. These guys have taken a massive hit. I'm moving them down, okay? Massive hit, okay? They're not as good as they used to be. We don't run flats and forests that often anymore. Not as good. So therefore, like, this is not a meta for stouts. Like, we don't play this guy anymore. He's not as good as he used to be. So it's a lot worse, okay? Okay, where was I? Here's Twilight, or no, Starlight. Starlight stays the way they are. It's the Pulsar laser beam, like heavy tank, or no, heavy like long range sniper basically for the tank version. It's good. It's expensive still. I'm gonna keep it where it was. Same from my last video. Leashes also same place. They have not changed that much in the meta. Most players don't go air Armada, but when they do, they often build a leash. because the leash is the atomic bomber. It flies in, it bombs something. It's very likely to get at least one kill. Oftentimes when it goes down, it feels really bad because it is like 2,000 metal or something, but it is pretty good. It can end games as well. Very good unit still. Bombers would also be in this spot where the leash is as well. All right, hounds are still very good units, solid units still, solid units still. I'm going to keep it where it is. They haven't really changed in the meta still because long range is still very similar. So there's a motor bot. It has like 650 range. It has two projectile options: Gauss cannon and like plasma cannon. Its default is plasma. Plasma is slower and AOE, a little AOE, while the Gauss cannon is very fast, right, and smaller AOE, if not single target. So the Gauss is very good for dealing with very pesky fast units, and the other is, just general use. Bulls have not been doing that well either. I'm moving them down as well next to the Stout. Bulls, after watching a lot of videos and like replays and doing the live casts and using the Bulls myself, I find that the cheaper units are a little better sometimes. So the Cortex Tiger is a lot better. Bulls do good damage. They do have good AoE. The problems are they are expensive, so they're not very not great on Supreme Ismuth, and on Glitters they're just okay, right? Because they don't have enough health anymore. Like players are a lot better, they defend more, they turtle more. Bulls aren't as good as getting in the backline as they used to be. So these tanks are going down in my opinion. Let's see, where were we? Leash, Doghound, Mausers, Mausers, Mausers stay where they are, guys. Like the tanks, the actual tank took a hit. But the Mauser is still where it is. Okay, it's still very useful when you have that plus the radar units, right? It can combat the sniper, it can combat Sheldons. Like it's still a artillery tank, very good as opposed to the bull, right? Pawns. Okay, so pawns and these guys, they're not as bad as they used to be. So I'm keeping them here, and maces. I'm keeping them high A tier. Maces, what's the deal with it? Oh yeah, the reason maces also have moved up a little bit is because I place a lot of value now on killing commanders. The problem with vehicles as well is they can't kill commanders that easily because they get D-guns so hard, and because they're more expensive, it hurts way, way, way more. And because vehicles don't have a reclaim bot, it hurts even more, 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 more. So vehicles really take a hit against commanders, but maces can kite commanders perfectly. They can kite them perfectly. Same with the other faction, right? Their plasma bot can kite commanders and just kill them. Insanely useful when you have maces and the enemy is just a commander. Like very useful, and they can push down light laser turrets pretty well when you have a group of them. So I would keep them there. Pawns still pretty useful. I mean, like these guys are very useful. Top of A tier. Sharpshooters, same as my last video. I'm like keeping them here because you can deal with them with there are methods to deal with them. They are very strong still. They are bottom A tier, or bottom S tier, top of A tier still. Like they are very strong units. They just hit you from long range. They can cloak, right? But they cost energy, a lot of resources to build and maintain, so they can be rushed down. So they're top of A tier, right? They have some counters. Janus is strong. We talked about them. Shredder's strong. We talked about, this is the T2 T2 flak anti-air from the vehicle factory. Still very good. I think is the Janus better, like use case wise, than the Shredder? I think Shredder is better because this is just too useful. Januses are, still useful. Rocketeers, I am not moving Rocketeers, I believe. Rocketeers are still like low S tier, right? Insanely useful for bot factories, right? They push down light laser turrets. Still like the meta strategy. Blitzes, guess what, guys? Blitzes are not so good anymore. All right. Are they better than a Centurion? Let's see. Let me think. Centurion or Blitz? Centurion or Blitz? Centurion or Blitz? I'm gonna keep them high B tier now. It's the same issue with like the other tanks is because we're playing Supreme Straight. Actually, they're not so bad on Supreme Straight, but like the thing is, most of the time they get D-gun, they get spotted. Players are really good at trying to stop the run-bys. And so when I first started using blitzes, like nobody was really used to the run-by at the opening run-by with the like 5 blitzes. They weren't used to that, and so they were just dying over and over to it. But players are a lot better to that now. They like build radars, they build ticks all the time. There's a tick meta or scout meta now. Like they open with scouts, and so they'll see it coming before you can get in. They're better at getting to the midline. The commanders are just there. They have it locked down. Like it's very hard to get blitzes to do their rushes now. So as a light tank, they're just okay as a light tank now. Like, yeah, just the light tank, they can get the enemy scouts that try to run by you. Like, yeah, so they're okay at that. I'm keeping them high B tier. All right, so Marauders are still high A tier or S tier still. I'm actually gonna keep moving them up a little bit. Oh, actually, yeah, Shredders. Okay, okay. Well, I'll talk about them later. Okay, let's do the Sharpshooter. No, what's it? Shell Shocker. Yeah, Shell Shocker T1 Artillery. T1 Artillery is because Supreme Ismith has difficulty getting metal. They're not as good as they used to be, so they're actually kind of worse than the Rocketeer. Um, for the factory line though, they're still like the best unit for them. So I'm gonna keep them S tier, but they've fallen off a little bit, just so you know. Actually, we'll put them next to the Janus because the Janus is all, like pretty much as good as them nowadays. Um, I still think Shell Shockers are really good because they can push down Wardens, or I think it's called Wardens, but like the T1 heavy like turret, laser turret. They're the only unit in T1 that I think can outrange them, and so they still stay S tier, although they're a lot weaker than they used to be because they only run on glitters and Supreme Straight, and they're better on glitters, but so on Supreme Straight. Okay, or Supreme Isma, yeah. We talked about them. Titans are still really good for Armada. They're the best T3 for Armada. I'm keeping them in the middle of S tier. Ticks, Ticks and Marauders. Ticks are more used. Like Scouts are insanely useful still. Scout meta, guys. Like open with Scouts. Like there are so many games that lose because of Scouts getting into the back line in the first like 5 minutes. Scouts, Ticks, insanely good now. Still amazing. You can tick spam. Distract all the shots from sharpshooters, from ambassadors, from like pulsars, like the what's that called? Starlights, like pulsar, tower defense, point defense units. So they block all that. Marauders are a game ender. They're used both on glitters and Supreme Ismith, so I'm going to keep them where they are. Like they are still a king of rushing into the backline and ending the game. They have built-in anti-air. They're fast. They have a little bit of AOE. Their HP is okay. Their cost is decent for T3. Those are like a low-cost T3, right? Speed is amazing. Damage okay, right? Range is good. Range is medium, right? But they're so good at just like running into the backline in any games. Okay, that's why they're up here. Lazarus's Resbots very good, right? You need these. You need these every game, pretty much. Like you reclaim stuff, res stuff, like every player needs to use this. All the pros will use this unit. So Resbots top tier. I feel like I 100% feel like vehicles should get a Resbot as well. Like I don't see a reason why they shouldn't, because nowadays I think the meta has kind of settled a little bit and bots are a little better because they have the Resbot, right? Just because they have the Resbot, I think they're a little better alone. So I feel like if you give the vehicles Resbots, like the Resbot could be expensive, right? That could be a fair balance, right? But I feel like vehicles should have a Resbot. There's no reason I think they shouldn't, because you might as well just reclaim your factory, build a bot lab, and then put out the Resbots. Like people do that just for Resbots. So yeah, like I feel like they should just be able to build one. It doesn't have to be a strong one, but just build one. Make it more expensive than the Lazarus. Fair trade off, right? Okay. And now we got the commander, who is your premier unit. He can D-gun, instantly destroy anything. He can cloak. He has a laser. He can build stuff. You want to get him to the front line. You can destroy him to reclaim. The game revolves around them. So yeah, top tier unit, most important unit. And that would be it for my tier list here for Armada. This is an updated version. This is the end of 2024 version of the tier list. And thanks for watching. This is my tier list, so it's obviously correct, right? Obviously. No other tier list is as good as mine. All right. I don't believe I'm missing any other units, although there might be more coming in the future. So hopefully I'm not missing anything right now. But this is how I see the game right now, and thanks for watching, and goodbye.